Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. If you're like me, you probably missed out on little Leela the first or second time that she was around. I personally didn't have enough viz to keep pulling on her. I did pull, but I just had to stop because I didn't have enough. Um, I was kind of hoping that we would get a good banner so that I could actually finally get her, because she is actually pretty good. But because of the current banners, we don't actually have a good chance to pull her without spending a ton of viz. So instead of like me trying to justify reasons for why I should pull her, I decided to make reasons why I shouldn't pull her. So I'm basically gonna break it down into two different things. Is she the actual best arithmetician in the game right now? And two, can I live without her? Are there other options coming up that I enjoy using other units instead of her? All right, so let's just keep it going here. Okay, so let's answer that first question. Why is she so good? If we look at her kit, she basically has everything that you would need to make her a good arithmetician, good for farming, good for basically having her as an easy, useful unit that has like so much utility. So she has both height-based cure and height 3 cura. So that's that. Cura is the big AoE one, and then the cure really isn't as good, but it's good to have extra cast of healing. Aside from that, she has the Aurora and Aeroga skills, which make her very good as an attacker because they are huge AoE magic attacks and they are instant cast. So that's pretty much what we all want from a unit. She does also have height 3 holy, so that gives her a little bit of second element attack. Usually doesn't really make that much of a difference, but definitely helpful to have a second element of attack on her kit. And then last but not least, on her white mage subjob, she does have full life, so that kind of makes her even better of a healer and a support unit because she can keep your team alive for a longer time. And it's full life, it's not raised, so it's the higher chance of healing, of actually landing, and it does the full healing. So the reason I have those asterisks there is because you kind of have to pick between white mage and arithmetician just so that you can decide which one of those skills is more useful to you. I think the full life is probably better. And so let's take a look at the other arithmeticians, and let me get my face out of the way for a bit so we can see Rairyuu. Okay, so basically it's a mixture of different abilities. If we scroll to the bottom, basically we see that we have a row of full life and raise. No other arithmetician has any kind of revive. So in terms of support and keeping your team alive, none of them are as good as little Leela, or as useful, I should say. But for the most part, both of the UR arithmeticians, they do have a pretty good kit, and they essentially have all the other skills that make them useful. I have an asterisk there on Helena's, Darkga, because she doesn't have that, but she does have other skills which are just as good, so you might as well just count that. Okay, so in terms of like other notes that you might want to put on Helena, is that her AI doesn't prioritize healing. She's more of an attack AI. But I think obviously Helena's still really good and still very useful, so that's not really minus points on her for anything on that. Okay, so moving on, we have Eldira. Eldira pretty much has the whole kit. The only thing that she's missing is the full life and raise. She is pretty much the standard arithmetician. She just has slightly less support and healing than little Leela, but she pretty much has everything else, and she's pretty standard. I didn't really think of any other note to put on the bottom for her, so she's pretty much the standard. All right, Livy, all her biggest weakness is that she's super slow. She does have the cure and the cura. She does have one of the offensive spells. I don't think that's too bad, as she does have other offensive spells. They're just not instant cast, but she's too slow to be useful. And obviously she's an MR, so she's not going to be doing as much damage, but she's still going to be pretty decent aside from being like really slow. And last but not least is Rairyuu. So the thing with Rairyuu, the worst thing for her is that she doesn't start with a lot of AP. So you really have to start with either using your cures or maybe using height 3 disable or whatever it's called to sort of build up AP, and then you can start maybe doing her offensive attacks. She, like, no one else aside from Leela has Holy, so nobody else really gets that second elemental type. Obviously Rairyuu is already light, so she doesn't really need another elemental type. But yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much it for Rairyuu. Everyone has height 3 disable, so I think that's useful, but like I don't think it's really useful in the sense of farming. And that, in terms of PvP, I'm not really sure how useful that is. I don't think it's as useful as being able to do huge AoE damage and huge AoE heals. Alright, so I was kind of looking at the other URs in the game and sort of just thinking of who can sort of match an arithmetician style of sort of farming and being able to be like easily usable. And I guess I'll bring my face back now. And really the only person I was able to think of on that level was Yuna. Obviously we all know that Yuna is really good, but Yuna actually has both Pray and Smile Practice on her TMR, so she technically has instant heals, and I believe Smile Practice actually gives a Protect and a Shell, so that's actually really good. Pray is a big AoE, so that's actually pretty useful. The only difference between an Arithmetician and her is that she has to cast it on herself, and anyone who's within her range is the one that gets healed in addition to herself. Okay, and in addition to the healing spells, she also has a bunch of other healing spells. So let's kind of, that last bullet point there, Kirata and Kiraga bonuses. If we look at her support abilities, she has both increased healing power up, and she has basically the fast cast. And of course she has the increased healing power up on her counter as well. So she's obviously super good at healing. I don't think I really need to say that, but obviously the healing side of her is really, really good. So in terms of offensive ability, she has Sonic Wings and Energy Ray. So again, those are both instant casts. One is technically her LB, but she does have that extra cast of that. The Sonic Wings is still 3 casts, which is still very good. And granted, she does have the support AI, so she'll stay back. But once, if the rest of the team is pretty much at full life and she's close enough to the enemy units, she'll start attacking. And I think she's actually really good at that. I see people use her for farming, and she works pretty well. So I think she's obviously one of the good units that comes close to an arithmetician. Of course, she's limited and not everybody has her, but she is kind of just there. And sort of recently, what I've been seeing a lot of is the hype around Fina. She's actually pretty close to being a meta unit, if not meta. So with her EX abilities, let's kind of start at the bottom here. What I wanted to say is that her attacks don't scale on magic, her normal attacks, until you EX her and get her EX ability. I believe that's her level 25 ability. So Bright Shower goes off of magic. So she has either 2 or 3 casts of that, but after that she doesn't really have any offensive capabilities. Also wanted to say that because she's an FFBE unit, I feel like she's getting slightly special treatment, and since she's an MR, she is pretty good in terms of just being an MR, and being a healer. I think being a healer kind of gives you a little bit more chance to shine because you don't have to actually be in the melee and getting hit, and you can still be useful in terms of doing your damage. And the fact that she has +3 range makes it easier for her to use her Bright Shower ability and do damage from pretty far away. And of course, the last thing to bring up is that she does have the full life, so that kind of makes her even that much better of a healer. And I forgot to mention, but obviously Yuna has full life as well. As if we take a look at her passive ability there, not only does it give her the +1 range, but it also increases her magic and her healing power. So that not only gives her, more ability to heal, that actually gives her more ability to do damage on top of that. So that's actually really good. So you pretty much are going to go for that passive as one of your choices of passives. So I'm kind of looking at the future EX units that we're kind of coming out with. I'm including Naiah and Adelard as part of this. Basically, with Naiah's going to gain a huge. They're both going to gain a huge amount of magic stat. Naiah's going to have an ability which gives, I believe it's AoE, and gives reflect and increases her healing power. So she's going to be able to heal a crap ton. She also has an ability that not only heals, I think this is on her Kiraga. She's not only going to be able to heal, but she's also going to increase whoever's in the AoE of that, increase their CT. So that's going to make them essentially make their turn come closer or give them another turn of attacking. So that's actually going to be really, really good. She's also going to have a ranged AoE regen. So normally regen is just cast on yourself and sort of an AoE attack. But now she's going to have the ability to have like 3 or 4 extra range. So she can cast regen and still kind of be behind everyone else. Of course, she's a white mage, so she has the full life ability, which is pretty much the standard thing that you need to be considered a healer. And sort of the last but not least thing is that I wanted to add, she is going to have magic spells. So she's going to have Fire and Resistance Break. I'm not necessarily sure if those are going to be good on her in terms of her being like that arithmetician level. She because of her magic stat increase, she is going to be able to do good damage on them. I just don't know if you want to really have her on the front line, considering she's an SR. She's probably going to be very easy to knock out. Okay, and on the right here we have Adelard. I always originally thought of him as an offensive unit. He's a red mage technically, so he's kind of both. But using him, he does have white mage, and if you put him on white mage, his AI will actually heal and do the support abilities. So I think he's actually going to be really good in terms of that. I think having the healing AI is slightly better than the offensive AI because that AI kind of engages in both, right? So one really good thing about Adelard is that he's going to get more magic, and he does have a magic up passive, so he's going to have a lot of magic. That's kind of why I did the ++. Not only is he going to gain magic, but he also is going to have it as part of his passive. So he's going to be able to get close to like Black Witch Helena and Yuna level of magic. And so that's going to give him the ability to both attack and heal a lot more than what he can now. He's also going to get a added ability to his jamming thrust. So not only is he going to be able to stop casting times, but he's also going to be able to reduce the percentage of being able to be countered by the opponent's counter ability. So like reflex, like Yuna's heal, or like any physical counter, he's going to reduce the ability, just kind of like Elena has on her kit. He's also going to get an addition of an attack break on his Firaga. So if you think of Rain, how he has the slow on his Firaga, it's going to be similar to that. However, he's not going to have an instant cast. He does have fast cast in his kit, so that's going to be useful to him, but it's not going to be as instant as someone like Rain. The one bad thing about him, using him as a healer, he's going to be more of a support than a healer because he just has raise. He doesn't have full life. I mean, again, that's still pretty okay. It's just like you wouldn't really want to use him in a meta battle. Moving on, I'm kind of just looking at other EXs and, quote unquote free units that we have coming up. So Minwu is one, and sort of Allied is the other one that I'm kind of looking at. So the cool thing about Minwu, she's kind of like not necessarily a healer. She doesn't have any kind of revive. I'm thinking maybe Rairyuu's TMR for the re-raise, I guess, but that's not really something that's going to be accessible to everybody. But she does have an ability that gives her more healing power, and she does have that passive too. She's going to have spirit and magic penetration on one of her offensive attacks. So she is actually going to have 2 offensive attacks. They do have cast time, but she is going to have fast cast as a passive. So I think she's going to be pretty useful in terms of that. She's going to be more of a supporter than a healer. So she's going to have 2 separate support buffs. One that's going to raise attack and magic, and one that's going to raise fire attack. So she's going to be super good on fire teams because she's going to give them 2 different ways to increase their damage output. She's also going to have quicken on her kit. So think of her as sort of like almost like a Phoebe on steroids. So she is going to be actually able to do damage. She's going to have quicken, she's going to have support, and she's going to have heals. So the only thing that she's not going to have is a revive. So I think she's going to be a really fun unit. And kind of the reason why I even included this slide is because this is sort of a different direction, I guess, in terms of units, where we're going to have an actual good support like buffer. I think that's going to be really good. But aside from that, she's going to have buffs, heals, and attacks. I'm super excited to use her. I feel like she's going to be probably my first selection quest unit that I'm going to try to build as soon as possible. Luckily, I'm going to have a good fire team, so I'm not going to have a problem with fully maxing her out, I believe. The other mention here is Valide. So the thing with Valide though is he's not going to get as much magic as like Adelard and pretty much everyone else I mentioned, but he's going to have a lot of buffs which are going to help him out. First thing is that he's going to get a boost in speed just naturally stat wise, and he's also going to be able to have a which I think you're going to be able to use on him since it's such a big AoE. His Barb Lazara is going to have agility, attack, and magic up. So that's going to help both him and the rest of his team. I think he should be able to keep up with the rest of his team. He does have a fast cast passive, so that's going to help in terms of quote unquote instant cast. It's not going to be instant, but it's going to help in terms of being able to do that. And right now, actually, Valide actually has a pretty decent kit in terms of if you put him on White Mage, he does have full life, and I believe he should have Curaga, if not Curada. So he definitely is going to be a decent healer. He doesn't really have an increased healing power, but he is going to have, ways to increase his magic, let's put it that way. And he does have the Imperil, so he's sort of, it's going to take some doing to get him to do damage, but he sort of has some kind of magic dealing potential. He's going to be a little bit harder to use, however, so I'm not really going to say he's going to be like meta or close to meta or a replacement for Little Leela, but he's sort of a free option, so I am super excited for when his EX comes out. And last but not least, I did kind of want to include Freyevia here. She's not going to necessarily be in the sense of Yuna, so that's kind of why I kind of kept it for last. She is already out, but she's sort of limited, so you might not have her, or you might not have her built up. But if you kind of look at her kit, she is actually a really good support healer. She does have the healing side to her, but she's more of a buffer slash support. She herself has and tank. She herself has slash, magic, and wind resistance. She does have the ability to cast a magic barrier on herself and increase her hate. And she does have an instant attack that both increases her own defense and spirit. So she can become a super duper tank. And I think in terms of support, she's actually a really good option, which I don't really see a lot of conversation around her. So I figured I would include her here. She does have the full life. And in my experience of going up against her, she doesn't really attack from what I've seen, but she does pretty much do all her buffs, and she does do her heals. So I think she is actually a pretty good option in terms of a healer slash support. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. There's a lot of units here that are sort of like overlooked or maybe not really brought to the forefront of attention, but I think we do have a lot of options in terms of having actually pretty good healers and support units as options. If you're not going to end up pulling for little Leela, I'm pretty much going to pass on her on this point, just because I feel like these are going to be very easy and free to build. A lot of these are pretty much free to build, so I feel like these are going to be pretty good options for my team and units that I do want to use, and I feel like they're going to be fun to use. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say, so let me just end it there. And I hope you guys can sort of see that there's like all these other options in terms of adding to your account without necessarily having the easy to use meta unit, but these units are going to be good to have on your teams, and they're going to be fun to play with. And in the meantime, because these are all going to be free, I'm pretty much going to save my viz and use that. I don't even really know what I'm going to spend it on, but I'll end up using that on something else in the future. So I think it's looking pretty good right now, and I hope you guys can sort of see a different perspective of what's going on here in War of the Visions. Alright guys, I think that's long enough, so let me end it there. See you in the next video.